Hey, Talksteer Luke here, and welcome to Classic Talksteer, and on today's video, we're taking a look at my ownership experience of my Volvo V70 P2. It's a 2007 model with 195,000 miles now on the clock. Yes, it's almost at that 200. And I've owned it for 4 years, which really dawned on me the other day. And it shocks me because normally I'm the type of person who swaps their car every 6 months, if not even more frequently. So for me to have kept this car for 4 years with no intention of getting rid of it in the future really is a testament to how well this car has served me. And that's what we're going to be looking at exactly in today's video. I want to do a deep dive into this car, so it's going to be quite a long video, but we're going to be looking at some old videos of when I got the car during lockdown, also what it's like to be to maintain the car, what it cost, and my overall thoughts on the practicality and daily day-to-day running of the car. So I hope you find this video informative. If you're looking at buying a Volvo V70, I hope this gives you some more insights. And if you're here from the beginning of the V70 series back in 2020, well, thank you for watching it for this long, and I hope it's a good trip down memory lane. So it's lockdown 2020. I'm in the middle of this series called Running Down a Dream, where I buy a cheap car, fix it up, flip it, and then use those profits to buy something a bit better, and repeat that process again and again. And for long-term viewers of the channel, I do intend to get back to that one day. It's just so many things piling up. I've got 205 GTI sat in the garage, which was like the 4th car on that series, and I've not touched it in 2 years. But that's a different video for a different day. In terms of the V70, it was the second car that featured on Running Down a Dream, and I got this after fixing up and flipping an old Ford Fusion. I sold it to my friend who buys and sells cheap cars, and he had this V70 waiting for me, which had a few issues. Effectively, the way it worked out with the money I had in the Fusion and what essentially the upgrade cost was after giving him the Fusion and getting to the V70, effectively the V70 cost me in total £550 because it was the Ford Fusion plus £150. So, bargain of a car in that sense. Of course, I'm not going to get a good working V70 for the cost of an old Ford Fusion plus £150, and there was issues with this car. Mainly, it needed a bit of cosmetic work, although it still wasn't too bad. But the big issues were that apparently it had a clogged DPF and the steering rack was leaking fluid. Now, the steering rack leaking fluid, I tried to put some stop leak into it. It just didn't work. It would just lose all its fluid in about 5 minutes. It was well and truly gone. So I found a place near Preston, which is like a town that's maybe 30 miles away from me, and I was able to buy a steering rack off them, a used one. It was like a Volvo Breakers. It was quite reasonable, like 100, maybe £150. And also looked underneath the car before I went down there, and it turns out that the intercooler pipe had been smashed off. Kind of made me suspect that was my DPF issue. So I got a new intercooler pipe from them as well. Suffice it to say, the entire repair cost of that, including giving it to a mechanic I know to get it fitted, so supply and fit, basically came to, with an MOT as well, £300. So essentially £900, I think. Yeah, £900 ads in the car at that point. It was back on the road and it was working, because as soon as that was fitted, the intercooler pipe, the DPF problem fixed itself. It wasn't an issue anymore. I suspect what happened was because there was a boost leak, the car went into limp mode, and then when it was doing that, I suspect that just probably wouldn't do a regen cycle on the DPF. So as soon as that was done, as soon as it took down a blast down the motorway, it's been fine ever since, and has never given the slightest hint of a DPF issue. Once the car was fixed up and working, it was time to do some cosmetic work to the car, and the car was very dirty. It was straight, don't get me wrong, it hadn't been really battered or anything, but it was very, very dirty. Now, the outside of the car really was dull. Even after cleaning the car up and doing my decontamination stage on the paintwork, it was weird. I noticed that there wasn't much contamination coming off of my clay bar. I also noticed as well that there's so much swirl marks. I'd never seen a car as swirled as this was. Honestly, it was shockingly horrendous and amazing at the same time. On top of that, when I look closely at the clean paintwork at this point, I noticed that it had this kind of white effect at the top of it, like it'd been sanded. Now, if you think of paintwork, it's got peaks, it's got valleys, like high spots, low spots, and that's kind of what gives it the orange peel effects on a poor paint job. All paint jobs have this, but some are more pronounced than others. Now, what you will find, if you take something like 1500 grit sandpaper and you rub it over the top of the paintwork, you'll notice these peaks, they become white as you sand it down, but the valleys, they keep the colour. The sandpaper's not hitting it yet. And the effect was very similar to that all over the car. Now, I know this car hadn't been sanded from a detailing perspective, but what I suspect, especially with no contamination on the paintwork, was that this car had been washed quite frequently and quite aggressively. Going like lots of circular motions, pushing down hard with a sponge or something, effectively sanding the paintwork. So after doing all the machine polishing, which was like the 6 passes with the compound, the polish, and then the ceramic coat, the car looked a lot better. And I was very happy with how this paintwork turned out. I mean, take a look at this before and after shot. I mean, it's just night and day difference what the swirls are like before and after. And what I did notice when I got this car clean and it was in the sun, it looked amazing. It's got this paintwork called Magic Blue Pearlescence. I don't think much V70s really have this blue, because most of them had more just a generic blue, which under dull conditions looks quite similar, just a normal dark blue. But this has this like purplish undertone to it, and when the paintwork's clean and it's well cared for and it's in bright sunlight, this amazing purple comes out in it. And it's only rare you get to see this in the UK, but when you do, it's super satisfying. Now, the other thing was, after doing all that, was the inside of the car, which on first glance didn't look too bad. If it was a black car, you'd say, oh, it looks pretty good. It's only after you start cleaning it deeper that you realise how dirty it was. This being a light interior and so much miles. Yeah, again, it got quite disgusting afterwards when you started looking at the before and after, especially with the driver's seat, because I taped half the seat up to see what the before and after was, and my God, it was such a day and night difference. It was super satisfying, don't get me wrong, but it was also a little bit like, wow, that's what's lurking on the seats and the carpets. Don't get me wrong, this is by far not the worst car that I've owned in terms of what I've had to do to clean the inside. The Ford Kuga I had recently, that was far worse inside. The upshot of this was, after doing all the carpets, the headliner, the seats, and polishing every nook and cranny of the car, inside and out, it looks amazing. And the colours the car was really showed the difference before and after. And it's probably the most satisfying detail I've ever done on a car. Really enjoyed this one. And at this point, I was like, this is too much work on a car that I'm going to flip. Don't forget, this is lockdown. Like, we're not allowed to see anyone. We're all stuck in our house, aren't we? We're going to drive ourselves crazy if we don't have any projects. So that's why I went overboard with the Volvo. I just did so much work to it. The problem was, it was nicer than my car at that point, which was my Audi A4, a B7 generation, which I paid £700 for that, and it was similar age to the Volvo. You know what I thought at that point? Let's swap them. The Volvo, I thought, it's got more equipment, it's higher specs, it's got a 5-cylinder diesel, more power, more practicality, and at this point it's so clean and in such nice condition, full service history, everything like that, and I'm like, yeah, I'd be silly not to give this Volvo a go, and I'm glad I did. I sold the Audi to the person I bought the Volvo off, actually, again, and before I did that, I took the wheels off the Audi, because I dropped the wheels down from 18 to 17 when I bought it, and put new tyres on it. So when I sold the car, they went back to the original 18-inch wheels, and the tyres though on the Audi, the 17-inch tyres, were the same size that the Volvo took. So I just literally less than 1,000 miles ago bought brand new Nexen all-season tyres, and the wheels were in need of a refurb on the Volvo. So I kind of used those two things at the same time to like kind of get two birds stoned at once. So essentially what I did with that, I got someone to take the wheels off. And then when I had the alloys, I refurbished them all. So I filled them back in with the Isopon alloy wheel fix, primed them, sprayed them, lacquered them, that kind of stuff. And the wheels looks really good. I was very happy with them. And even today, 4 years later, they are standing up very well. There's no flaking on them, no peeling. I have curbed one of them. That's my own fault. That's the extent of the damage I've done to this car and owning it in 4 years is I curved the driver's wheel a bit. Apart from that, it was all good. And I got the tyres put back on and back on the car, painted all the calipers while they were off, cleaned the wheel arches. The car was looking $1 million. It was like a brand new car. It's probably one of the nicest V70s you could buy at that point, with its spec, its condition, its history. It was a very nice V70. And now going on to its specification, it's a very good spec one. It's an SE Lux. Not much of them seem to have SE Luxes. The SE and Sports were much more common. The SE Lux was like the top dog, apart from the V70R, which was kind of its own separate beast. I don't think you can class the V70R amongst the regular V70s. So it was a very well spec'd V70. It's got the xenon headlights. It's got the electric heated memory seats on both sides. It's got softer leather than the regular SC V70s. It's got this like Napa leather to it. It's really, really nice. And it's one of the latest ones, the last of the P2. It's a 2007 model. And if you notice on the 2007 models, they do have one distinctive difference when you look at them. If you look at the indicators on most V70s, they're in the wings or the fenders. On the 2007 model year, like the last one, they moved them up to the mirrors. So it's got different mirrors and like mirror-mounted indicators. But all that taken into account, it's a manual transmission, which is strange for one of these. When I first got the car, I was kind of like a little bit gutted it wasn't an automatic. But after living with this for a while, I'm glad I've got the manual, because this car's been very, very reliable. But I do believe that, from what I've heard, that one of the weaker spots on these cars mechanically with the drivetrain is the automatic transmissions. So I'm kind of glad from that perspective that an older car, that I've got a manual transmission. It's just less to go wrong. And that combination is still well suited to that D5 engine. Actually is really, really good. Also, there's a couple of benefits of having the manual. Firstly, it's a lower tax bracket in the UK because of the emissions. So this costs about £280 to tax. I think the automatic's like £350. And the fuel economy is going to be a bit better as well. I do very much a realistic combined driving cycle of my car. The trip computer shows 43 miles per gallon. I think that's very respectable for a car. It's 185 horsepower, 2.5 litre, weighs upwards, I think, of 1,700 kilograms. So to get a combined cycle of 43 mpg, I think it's very respectable for a car this age. It's actually the figures that Volvo give for the car on the combined cycle from new. So nice accurate figures from Volvo. That's good as well. So really like that. After posting all those videos on YouTube, a viewer reached out to me and actually said, that used to be my car. And I thought that was really cool that someone who was watching my channel actually used to own the car, because my channel's not that big. It's not even this big today, and it's not that big today, and it wasn't this big a few years ago. So it was really cool to make that connection with someone and learn more about the history of my car. Unfortunately, and I'm very sorry about this, I totally forgot your name. So if you're still watching the channel in 2024, please leave a comment in the comment section below and say hi, because thank you for reaching out to me all those years ago, and it was very useful, the advice you give me, so I do really appreciate it. And this person seemed to be a Volvo enthusiast. He actually sold the V70 in the end to buy an S60, which looked quite nice. And when I look at the stuff that he did to the car, I believe it was him anyway, between like 2016 and 18, I've got some stuff on the screen there. There was a lot of work done to it. He like did a lot of work. So basically what he did in here, if I look at 2016, there was £1,200 spent at 147,000 miles on parts. 2017, there was not as much, but top mount and coil spring, £180. And then in 2018, there's receipts, let's say receipts, there's lots of receipts, including drive belt, timing belt, and water pump at 165,000 miles. Various suspension parts like tie rods and bushers, and those came to £567 for that year, and that doesn't include labour on the drive belts, timing belts, and water pumps. Also talking to this person, he also confirms that the clutch and flywheel have been done on the car around that time as well. There's no invoices for them, but obviously that's going to be kind of expensive to supply and fit that as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if that course over 3 years, the car had like £3,000 spent on it, which is really, really good. Which is actually a godsend considering who the car went to afterwards. Now, I don't know who the car went to personally. A friend of a friend kind of owned it, let's say. But the car was not maintained. It had like a period of 10,000 miles when nothing was done to it. I think that's probably where the scuff came on the back. That's probably where the car got so dirty. And basically, it seems like the guy was very, very cheap and would not do any repairs on it. So thankfully, I think by the time when he got the car, it was in such good condition that it had a little bit of a grace period before it could fall into disrepair. It's probably good that it had this perceived DPF faults and this issue with the steering rack, because I think if it had lesser faults, the car would have been ran into the ground and probably would be sat in a scrapyard today. So because the car had a big issue that needs to be fixed, he was like, get rid of it. And thankfully, I'm glad I managed to get hold of that car, because it's got lots of life left in it. And I've made sure that the upkeep on that car has been maintained. Like, here's my service history on the car as well coming up. Oh, actually, I'll show you this. It's kind of interesting. Just the if I look at the service booklet, I can see that it's got all the service history going up to when I bought the car. Everything's stamped. It looks like it's never missed an oil change or anything like that. And essentially, it looks like it spent the first part of its life, its first half of its life in Hull, and then came up to Merseyside after that. But yeah, since I've got the car, I've kept all my invoices, and on here, most of it's regular maintenance. So some of the stuff I've had to do is I've had to replace the front door speakers because they'd blown. So cheap job, just kind of difficult to find 8-inch speakers. It's got this big sound system on this one. It's the HU 850 with the premium sound system. So most of them V70s have the standard sound system. This one has 13 speakers in it and 8-inch woofers in the door. And I've also added a subwoofer, underfloor subwoofer to it now as well. So I think I've got like 14 speakers in this car. It's kind of crazy. 300 watts of power, basically on the factory speakers. It's a good sound system, so I replaced the front door speakers on that. On top of that, though, there was other stuff I've done to it, like putting the CarPlay screen in with the backup camera. That's just for my own convenience, Bluetooth, that kind of stuff. I've also done some other like quality of life improvements. The wooden steering wheel, which I thought finished the car off really nice. That's a kind of a rare option to find, but I found one. Some new floor mats, fitted ones, proper Volvo boot mats. I've got the dog guard that comes up and down, which needs to be installed, but that's there as well. So just a few extra niceties to the car to complete it. In terms of maintenance to the car, of course, I've done normal servicing, and nothing's too expensive about that. Filters, oil, that kind of stuff's very cheap. I can probably service the car, oil and filter change, for about £30, so very, very reasonable if I do that myself. Most of the problems I've had are suspension and steering related throughout my entire time of owning the car. So I'm going to cut to a quick clip of me just showing what's up with the car at the moment, and then we'll carry on with this conversation. I hope this isn't too loud for you with the main roads, but I want to show you pretty much what's happened with this car, because it's due for its MOT and it's not going to pass the way it is at the moment. Unfortunately, I am noticing a little bit of rust coming through just on this wing. This is the only part of the car that's got a little bit of corrosion. I need to get that sorted before it gets any worse. Now, if I look underneath the car firstly, I'm just going to show you how good this car is. It's very good underneath here. No rust or anything. It's very, very solid. So moving on to this. So the car was due its MOT and I wasn't going to pass because the ABS light was on. Now, last year I replaced the ABS sensor, thinking that cured the problem. It hadn't, because what happens is these sensors, this is a new one I've just stuck on, they go very close to this ring on the drive shaft and it measures wheel speed. Now, over time, this metal ring, it corrodes, and when it corrodes, it expands. And what happens is, because this is not going to move, it comes into contact with the sensor, wears it down, and just basically shaves it away. So we need to put a new ring on this side as well. Now, I could put a new ring on it, or instead, I opted to replace the drive shaft of £45, and I'm very glad I did that. I'll show you that in a second. When I replaced the drive shaft, I also stuck some brand new transmission oil in there, so that's nice and fresh as well. And when we came to do the job, I also noticed that the inner tie rod was extremely loose. There were like, the amount of play in it was horrendous, and I think this was causing the knocking sound I was getting going over bumps, as well as the pitching and diving when I'm trying to brake and accelerate. The car would move left and right under certain circumstances. So, and also, I always had a slight vibration to the wheel. So hopefully all that gets cured with just that part being replaced. I accidentally replaced the, I accidentally misdiagnosed what the knock-in was and replaced the drop links both sides. So it's had new drop links. Then I put new wishbones on because the bushes had gone on that side. And the previous owner had also replaced the springs by the look of it, going by the service history. And then I put new top mounts on both sides as well. So this car's had lots of stuff done when it comes to the suspension and the steering. So hopefully after this, it should drive like a new car because pretty much all that stuff is new. Well, if I get under here. Hey, Tommy. Hey. What are you looking for? I'm here now. No one out there. I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. There's no one out there. No. So when I had the wheels off the car, I just decided to give them a clean up again. The refurb I did 4 years ago held up really well. I mean, there's no paint flaking. That's been really, really good. So I'm surprised and happy with that. Me being careless, I have curbed them a couple of times on the driver's side. So I've just touched them in on here. You can see if you look closely, but from a distance, not too bad. But here's what I wanted to show you. So here's a couple of wheel hubs off the car. This is the old one, the original. That's the new replacement one. Now, normally when I said about that ABS ring, you could just push the shaft, the drive shaft, out of here because you can see it's on a spline, and it would separate, and you could put a new ring on and put it back in. Unfortunately, there's no way on earth that this drive shaft is coming out. We tried everything we could. Had in a 45-ton press, still wouldn't budge. In fact, at that point, it broke the carrier, the hub. So it's actually it broke the metal in two instead. So that's how much the rust welded that drive shaft into there. Also noticed well that the ball joint's a bit perished, so I've got a new ball joint as well. So it's going to go onto this one here, which you can see is separated. It's the same unit, waiting for its ball joint to go in there. So that should cure the problem. I'm going to take the caliper and the disc over to that one, and then hopefully that should be the end of that, and that problem should be cured. So the wheel hub, that was about £60, and this is the inner tie rods that I said had lots of play. So I got a replacement of about £15. So as you can see, there's so much play in this. This is crazy, actually. So yeah, that's going to be causing a lot of knocking, that pitching, probably the vibration to the wheel. So hopefully anything that was left with suspension and steering problems will be cured by this as well. So in total, when I look at this entire folder of stuff that I've done to it, including new front tyres as well, all comes to £1,200. That also includes the initial repair cost on the car when I bought it. So, you know, £1,200 repairs total and maintenance and everything in 4 years, and then £500 buying the car kind of puts us £1,700. So 4 years ownership, £1,700, maintained to a good standard. You know, I've not skimped out on the maintenance. If something needs doing to it, I'm doing it to this car, and I think that's phenomenal. I'll get that much back for the car now, probably, if I sell it. So effectively, the car's been free motoring for the last few years. Of course, I've got labour in terms of what I've done to the car, in terms of my own time, but that's probably more than paid for itself on the YouTube channel. So yeah, I think that's been fantastic. Now, there are a couple of faults still present, which have been there since I've actually bought the car, including the fuel sender, or the fuel gauge not working. I've put new fuel senders on, that doesn't work still, so it's probably the ground of the fuel sender needs to be looked at. So that's one of my next jobs. Seems to have a leak at the top of the tank when it's full, like maybe like an O-ring or something's leaking, so a bit of fuel can splash out. Thankfully, it's a diesel, so it's not flammable. And don't worry, not enough comes out to, you know, hurt a motorcyclist. It's not enough to be slippy or anything like that, but you just do notice a little bit of a fuel leak if the tank's full and you slam the brakes on. So that's still there. And also, it's a little tiny bit unresponsive on the turbo. Like, full power's there if you need it. It's just when you first take it off, it's a little bit laggy. And it's been like that since I bought it. Maybe the vanes in the turbo are a little bit frozen, a little bit stuck. So maybe some turbo cleaner might actually just help that out. I'm going to give that a go very soon. So I kind of want to give this a second refresh in the next few weeks if I can. So that's kind of like maintenance where the car's been up to. It's been really good, to be honest. I couldn't ask the car to be any more reliable in its being, considering its age and its mileage. Oh, one other thing I've had with the car, just a little thing, was a small electrical issue, which was a bad ground. Again, I cleaned all the ground points off and the car's been great. So sometimes the gauges will just go off and then come back on. And that stops now. So again, I think that's just very much age related and nothing more than that. Moving on to this last chapter, and I just want to talk about my experience with the car, owning it, and how my perceptions of cars have changed. So when I got this car, I was in my late 20s, now in my early 30s. And I feel like what I want from a car is different to what I wanted before then. And I've kind of got this from having lots of experience with different cars to settle on this. And before, I wanted something that was kind of sexy, sleek, faster, that kind of stuff. And then I kind of got married. So at that point, I was like, I don't have to try anymore. I can just give up and have the old man car. And honestly, I'd rather have the comfort, reliability, quietness, and practicality of that car over the compromises of a sportier, sexier car, even like the Alfa 159 I've got in the back garden, which is a lovely car. But if you asked me a few years ago, would I choose a 159 or would I choose a V70? There's no way in hell I thought I'd have chose the V70, but here I am. I would choose the V70 over my 159, over my A4s, over any other car that I've owned in the past. Now, a lot of this, to be honest, and I'm joking aside, is for my job working at Fords. Now, I worked as a road tester, so we would produce transmissions for cars, and any transmission we produced in the car, that particular model, we would take a sample off the assembly line, go and road test it. So I had access to lots and lots of brand new, off the assembly line, pretty much Fords. They all had less than 5,000 miles on them. My job was to take the transmissions out, put them in, listen for noise, take them on the road, 50-mile road test, and just try everything else on the car. What I got to experience from now with sporty cars, from the Fiesta STs and the Puma STs, to more comfortable cars, the Mondeo, the C-Max, the Cougar. And what I discovered firstly is I preferred the comfortable cars to the sporty cars. Secondly, I also discovered that the Volvo was a better luxury, comfortable car than any of those new Fords. And I'm not having to go to Fords anyway with their cars. It's like same experience of other new cars I've tried that I've had as like rental cars and such. But what I found was the quality is just not the same. And maybe I'm comparing a Volvo to a Ford, but I'm also comparing, over 15 years difference. My car's got 200,000 miles on it. What I discovered was the Volvo was quieter. It was smoother. It handled better than the Cougar and the Mondeo. It had hydraulic power steering, so the feedback was better. I felt it was more lively, had a nicer engine. Maybe, again, I'm comparing a 1.5 EcoBoost against a 2.4 D5. 5 cylinders versus 3. Maybe that's part of the difference, but I preferred the engine on the Volvo. It was more powerful. It was smooth on the motorway. The build quality was much better. The audio system's better. The practicality is better. Honestly, I mean, I could be biased on this. Honestly, I don't know, because I do like, I've kind of got going attached to my car. The seats, though, unquestionably better on the Volvo. But all that aside, is what that's made me do is appreciate that I didn't have to spend lots of money on a car to get a good car. I could have spent £35,000-40,000 on a Cougar or Mondeo, like at least one monthly, on like a PCP. I wouldn't have been as happy with the car as I've currently got now. So if I can save, well, let's be honest, I mean, the current price of a new Cougar is 6 months payments on that Volvo. 6 months renting the Cougar, buys that Volvo with all the maintenance I've done for the last 4 years. And I can sell that Volvo now for the cost I bought it for plus the maintenance. I'll get £1,700 back of all its service history. I'll get more back for it. I can still probably turn a profit on it, which is kind of crazy. So I feel like I've had a win-win-win-win scenario with that over trying to buy something newer. And all this experience I've had with new cars makes me not want to swap the car out for something new. And that's what is really the sweet bit, is I'm happy with it. And well, I guess I will just say Volvo were quite right when they said Volvo for life. Good slogan, and I think it's quite fitting. Anyway, I know this has been a long video, I know I've waffled on a lot about this car. You're probably sick of it at this point. It's totally biased, probably. I really like it, but I hope you've enjoyed this anyway, this trip down memory lane. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. Be great to hear if you've bought a V70 because of any of these videos, or what your experiences are with other P2 generation of Volvos. Let me know. I look forward to seeing what you have to say about it. But thank you all for watching, and as always, see you soon, and take care.